In today's video, I'm going to show you how I reworked this original underpainting into this new version. So I'm going to start my day with a little bit of iced coffee. I got to get my mind right. I've got to feed my artistic soul. And I'm going to have some nice soothing music, enjoy my coffee, get my brain in the creative process, maybe read a little bit of my International Artist magazine while I sip my iced coffee, and then I'm going to get my body ready. So I'm going to do a little elliptical. That helps clear my mind. I also like to watch a little bit of educational, usually art history or something while I'm on there. And then I go into my studio and I take a look at my artwork where I'm at, and usually through the mirror so I get a different perspective, and then let's get started. All right, so I had a moment of, I don't know, I just decided that what I had done initially with the underpainting wasn't working. I don't know exactly what was the problem. I stared at it and something just felt wrong to me. And it seemed to be happening on this side of the face. So I sanded it off with some pretty fine sandpaper. It's just a simple, what is this, 360 grit sandpaper. And just sanded it down to the gesso layer. I didn't want to go too crazy with the sanding and go through the gesso, because then I'd have to re-gesso, and I didn't want to do that. So it's dry now. And what I did to paint it back in was I still stuck with the transparent oxide brown and just a little bit of the walnut oil gel. And then I mixed up a little bit of transparent oxide brown and white. So I'm basically turning this monochrome underpainting into a grisaille. So this is not normally the way that I paint, but it seemed to be a good way for me to correct the drawing issue, which I still don't know what it was. It probably was fine anatomically. It just maybe, I think I wanted to see a little bit more of this side of the face, I feel like. So when I redrew it in, I just made sure that I added what I needed to add to have a little bit more on that side. It's a Native American face, so I just wanted a good high cheekbone. I wanted a nice fullness in the face, not too narrow of a nose, and a full lip. And I don't know, it just seemed to take me here. And so now the grisaille process is happening. So I'm working from the underpainting into a grisaille, and I'm only going to do the grisaille in the face. I don't feel it's necessary to take it through the whole entire painting, which is kind of like if you've ever seen the Caravaggio painting process. He did that. He would start with a line drawing, and then he would go right into the grisaille process, and he used pretty much pure white and raw umber. And instead of the raw umber, I'm just using the transparent oxide brown. So I have been looking at this for a while now. I don't know why I am so nervous about painting her. She's this is a big painting for me, as far as it's going to be living in that giant cookie slice piece of wood. It's kind of like the crown to this whole series, this Westerns in Wood series. So it's a very important, prominent piece, and I think that's getting in my head a little bit, and I need to get out of my head and just let my creative process work. I've painted faces before. I know I can do it, but this one is just getting in my head and freaking me out. So I'm gonna just get past that and realize, if I paint this entire painting and I still am not happy with it, I can wipe the whole thing off and start over. So there's that. So I'm going to get started with finishing the grisaille. I wish I'd showed you guys the sanding off process, but I'm going to put up here on the screen the picture of the finished underpainting and put this readjusted grisaille next to it so you can see the difference. And you tell me, which one did you like? Did you like the first underpainting better, or are you liking the second version? And we'll see how that goes. So let's mix up some transparent oxide brown and white. Right now I'm just going to work with the grisaille colors, little string of value. So one of the things I was thinking about, since this is going to have flesh and then it's a band of transparent lightly painted red, she's got a red kind of face paint going across her eyes. So I was thinking, do I want to paint the skin, or do I just want to leave the underpainting? And I have decided to go ahead and paint in a grisaille skin color so it matches the rest of the face, and then I'll do the red on top. Hi everybody, Shelly here. Are you still struggling to learn how to paint portraits? Do you want to learn how to paint a portrait in the selective start method? Well, I got you covered. So I have a tutorial on how to paint this exact portrait here. So it's a model that I did a photo shoot with. So in the tutorial, you're going to paint brushstroke by brushstroke with me in the selective start method. And together we will finish and create a beautiful portrait like you see here. It's called Portrait of Emmeline. And if you want to learn more about my portrait tutorials, it's easy. You just go to sjcportraitcourse.com, and not only is the portrait tutorials half off right now, the coupon code is in the description below. So half off portrait tutorials, and I'm going to throw in an extra critique. So the portrait tutorial comes with one free critique. At the end of the portrait, you can send in what you've painted and I critique it for you. But for the whole month of December, I'm going to throw in another portrait critique free. So you can either paint another painting, or maybe you have one that you've already done and you just haven't had a critique on it. You can send that in. So you get the portrait tutorials at half off, an extra bonus critique free. So go ahead and check that out at sjcportraitcourse.com. So that was my thought process on that. Now remember, the light's coming from above here, aiming in this way. There's your light source. So there's going to be quite a bit of light hitting this upper cheekbone here. But this is the shadow side of the face that we have to remember. So I don't want it to be too light. It's definitely going to be lighter on that side than this side. And I'm painting this grisaille very thinly. So we have the thin paint layers going down, and then we'll have thick paint layers in a few stages beyond. You definitely want to keep your grisaille thin. You don't want to have thick paint brush marks to have to work out. Now the old masters probably used a more transparent white. This is titanium white, which is not transparent at all. So I am going to use some of the walnut oil gel to just loosen that paint up a little bit and keep it very thin. The transparent oxide brown is thin, so that'll help keep the grisaille color from getting too thick. So we're stepping in to a little darker value, moving away from the light now. Darker value as we come across here. Getting ever so slightly darker. Moving into that hair line. So Caravaggio would put down pure white in the lightest skin tone areas of his figures, and then glaze over top of that with the flesh tone colors and very thin glazes, washes of skin tone. He would probably do 3 to 5 layers of skin tone over top of the white it must have worked out for him because, you know, Caravaggio's paintings look amazing. So I'm always thinking about the plane, the volume. I want to always feel like if you're sculpting this, you know, you're feeling that roundness of that upper eyelid area. If I were feeling it with my fingers, what would it feel like? That's a little light, so I'm just going to come in with a little bit more transparent oxide brown and just kind of sculpt the shape here that I'm looking for. Remember, this eyebrow's casting a little bit of a shadow onto the eyelid, which is why you don't want a harsh line from the eyebrow to the eyelid. Cast shadow there. So I'm going to thinly put in a bit more of the transparent oxide brown into the shadow area. I want to really see this shadow here. The eye socket recedes inward here. The eyes are the most important part of this painting, and so I really want to make sure I don't lose any part of the emotion in the eye. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's a little bit of a Mona Lisa-esque vibe happening. So I don't want to lose the thickness of that lower eyelid, so it protrudes a little bit and it's going to create a little shadow underneath here. So an interesting thing about the Native American culture that I learned when researching this painting, the bow and arrow was thought to have been gifted to the Native American people from the sun and the moon. The moon being the more female side of it, gifted the bow, and the sun being the more masculine part of this gifted the arrow. So the sun and the moon are required to have the bow and arrow. So I'm trying to tie that into the name of this painting, and I'm thinking about calling it Moon Bow. Moon Bow the Archer, something along those lines. But I thought that was interesting how it requires, it's almost like a yin and yang, the sun and the moon. You need both. So I want it to look like it's bright sunny day. So I feel like, from my experience in photographing in the bright sunlight models, that there is usually pretty harsh shadows cast. If it's a very sunny day where the sun's pretty much overhead, or it could be could be late in the day, maybe a little bit. Pretty high contrast from the lights to the shadows. So you know how the whites of the eyes are never really white? I feel like this mixture of transparent oxide brown and titanium white is making a pretty good white of the eye color. Now there would be more of a cast shadow here, so have a little highlight happening. This part of the iris should be a little darker to help round out the eye, and also just show that it's getting a little shadow from the upper eyelid. So in this 3/4 view, it's extremely important that the iris is the same size and shape in both eyes to be believable as real. So I keep looking at that, and I'm wondering if this pupil needs to come down on this eye the tiniest bit. I mean, it's really tiny. But in a face this large, those little increments of adjustments are important. I'm thinking, since that's the lightest side of the face, this eye on the right, will this iris be that dark? Will there be this much contrast in the eye? I'm gonna lighten it just a little bit since I'm not sure. Just bring this lash line up a little bit, round it out. Do not want to paint individual eyelashes at all, because this Native American woman would not have had any mascara on, that's for sure. Now she will have eyelashes, but we're just going to paint them in a way that suggests them, not individually. So this eye is going to have skin that comes around, and you can see into it here, and it will be a little bit darker because it's inside the eye socket. So I'm liking that. These are equal and in the right angle. So the eyebrows are angled, then you got the eyelid line, the lash line, the lower lid. It's kind of lost on this eye, but I like it, so I'm gonna leave it. This is the light side of the face, so we're getting a lot of bright light hitting it. But also remember, she's got a little bit of a darker skin tone, medium to dark. Definitely not a very light skin tone, so I want to keep that in mind. So where I sanded off the hairline that was on this far side here, this right side, I can still see a little bit of it showing through, so I'm just going to do another layer over here. It's a little more opaque. Now that works out because the forehead on the face is going to be the lightest part of the face anyway, so we can push the white up here because of that, and that will help make sure this doesn't show through into our final painting. So sanding off parts of paintings is something I've done a few times. I think there's 3 paintings that I did that with. That's the beauty of oil painting. I like to think that there's no fear because of all the ways that you can correct and manipulate a painting. Still thinking thinner layers. I don't want this forehead to have a bunch of thick, heavy brush marks. And that's why the walnut oil gel is helpful, because it'll let your brush strokes just kind of smooth out. Smudging them with your finger helps. And I'm not worried about having a really hard edge over here either. I like it to be broken, as they call it. So this part of the forehead protrudes out a little bit further, making that brow ridge. We can indicate that as we come across here. The eyebrow is going to be a little bit lighter on the top portion. Kind of roll under a little bit here. All right, we're working our way down. We've got the forehead pretty good. The eyes are looking pretty good. More shadow in here on the side of this nose. I feel like anytime you can increase the contrast in your face, it'll help push the volume and give you more of a 3D realistic feeling. Flat, cartoony face staring back at you. The blending of skin tone transitions from light to dark, I think it's an Italian term. Have you heard this? Sfumato. That is how you get those beautiful, soft transitions that just make beautiful, flawless skin happen. So in the grisaille, I am really getting a chance to practice sfumato. So this wing right here, even though it's on the shadow side, it's still getting a little bit more light because it's rounded up towards the light and out away from that cast shadow a little bit. We recede back in here, and this is rounded. This part of the mouth, it's called the muzzle. So I want to make sure I don't flatten this out. This is rounded, like a mound. There's going to be a bit of a cast shadow underneath the nose here. So I don't have a reference for this painting. It's all created from my imagination. I can't put anything up on the screen for you. It's just how I see it. I'm relying a lot on anatomical drawing, and when you know the anatomy and how it's supposed to be drawn, you can make little adjustments because no face is the same. Every face is different in some way, and you can make those little adjustments, like a wider nose, higher set cheekbone, maybe more receded eye, higher eyebrow, lower eyebrow. Some people's eyelids are more set in and some are more rounded. So you can make those adjustments to create all different kinds of faces. So the light's hitting this cheek, and then it's going to get a little bit darker as it comes down here towards this mouth area. Lower lip, and of course this upper lip's turning away from the light. So let's think about this rounded bit here. So it's going to be a little bit more light hitting it here away from the cast shadow of the nose. And then it's going to start to get a little darker as it rounds away. So I'm not just blending it together, even though it's just two different colors. I'm trying to get the right step in there. So now you can see that necklace. So yeah, these white bits of bone and this big medallion here, that'll reflect light up and it'll catch the underneath part of her chin. So there's this part here that's still going to be shadowed, that plane right there. The other thing too, when we're actually putting in some of the color, that may help the volume, because you can also manipulate volume by way of color temperature and color saturation. All right, I'm just going to keep working in the sfumato, transitioning from this dark to this light area, making sure I don't lose the volume. And then we'll let her face dry and I'll go ahead and paint in the background.